If a pilot is flying around the curve of the Earth, then he should be dipping the nose down every 5 minutes. He should be dipping the nose down to stay around the curve. But the thing that really got me interested was, as you say, the gyroscope. In a plane, there is an artificial horizon, okay, and it's based on a gyroscope. And if you spin a gyroscope on a surface, it will want to stay upright. You can twist and tilt the surface as much as you like, the gyroscope will stay upright. So if a plane has a gyroscope and it starts following the curve of the Earth, the gyroscope would stay upright, which means the artificial horizon will start to roll backwards. But it doesn't. That's absolute proof that a plane flies over a flat surface rather than a curved one. Because I asked the pilot on my last flight, do you ever notice the artificial horizon rolling backwards? He said, no, but the artificial horizon has complex electronics in it to make sure it knows where it is on the Earth and it compensates. But I went to the manufacturer of the artificial horizon, and they confirmed to me that it's completely mechanical, nothing electronic in it whatsoever. So it's literally just a gyroscope that can freely move. So that right there is proof to me that planes fly over a plane. None of it makes sense. The problem is that we're taught as children, this ball Earth lie, and you might ask as a child, what about the people in Australia? They're standing on the bottom of the globe, won't they fall off? And your teacher says, no, gravity. And you go, oh, okay. And you never go back to that question. But when you go back to it as an adult and start looking at it with a critical eye, right, the whole thing falls apart. As you say, the globe is spinning at 1,000 miles an hour. Neil deGrasse Tyson, who's a leading astronomer in America.
I'm Neil deGrasse Tyson, bitch.
Tells us that the Earth is not a perfect circle, it is actually an oblate spheroid. It's squashed and wider at the equator. Yeah.
So Earth, throughout its life, even when it formed, it was spinning, and it got a little wider at the equator than it does at the poles. So it's not actually a sphere, it's oblate, and officially it's an oblate spheroid. That's what we call it. But not only that, it's slightly wider below the equator than above the equator.
A little chubbier.
A little chubbier.
Yeah.
Chubby's a good way. It's like pear-shaped.
So my question to him would be, why is there land at the equator? Because water will move more readily than rock. So if the Earth is spinning, the water will be collected at the equator. I mean, if you spin a wet tennis ball, the water shoots off at the equator, essentially. So all the water will be gathered around the equator. So why is there land at the equator? Doesn't make any sense. The other thing that's about the spinning Earth is looking at the stars. Now, directly above the axis of spin is the pole star, Polaris, okay, directly over the North Pole. And we're told that the reason that all the stars spin around the North Star is because the Earth is spinning at 1,000 miles an hour. Okay, seems to make sense, because if you put a long exposure camera pointing at the North Star, you'll see the stars will make perfect circles around, perfect star trails. The only problem is the Earth is also orbiting the Sun at 67,000 miles an hour. Okay, the Sun is moving, dragging the Earth and all the planets up that way or that way at 600,000 miles an hour. So why do we see perfect circles? Because that's the slowest speed, that's slowest motion in that mix. And yet the Earth is moving 67 times faster that way and 600 times faster that way. So you should see the stars do all sorts of strange motions, but you don't. You only see them make these perfect circles. That tells me that it's the stars that are moving, not the Earth. The thing is, what the scientists will give you is calculations and and theories. why that happens, but we have experience. We see things and they either make sense or they don't make sense. And what the scientists do is substitute our common sense and our intuition for calculations and theory. And we're supposed to believe the calculations rather than what we experience ourselves. There was a famous experiment back in the 1800s in England called the Bedford Levels experiment. Now, the Bedford Levels is a canal that is perfectly straight for 6 miles. Okay, so what a chap called Samuel Rowbottom did was he took a telescope, put it in the water about 8 inches above the water, and he had a friend, in a rowboat with a flag on the back, row all the way to the other end, and he was able to see the flag on the back of the rowboat the whole distance. Now, according to spherical trigonometry, the curve of the Earth is 8 inches per mile squared. So over 5 miles, that's 5 times 525 times 8, which is 200, that's 200 inches, which works out at 16 feet. That means the boat should have been 16 feet below the horizon. You shouldn't have been able to see the boat. Now, the scientists will say, oh, refraction and this and light bending around the Earth and stuff. But the fact is, it's perfectly flat. And he in his book, he puts forward many arguments that show that, or many experiments that show the Earth is always perfectly flat. They say that you see the mast, go down last. It's literally just the way your vision works. Yeah, it's perspective and atmospherics basically. The limit of your vision is supposedly 3 miles. And then after 3 miles, you're supposed to see the boat start to go over the horizon. It's funny that Neil deGrasse Tyson again says that, explains that you can't see the curvature of the Earth from a plane. He says this, you can't see the curvature of the Earth from a plane because you're not high enough. The Earth is so big that you can't get high enough to see the curvature. Yet, you can apparently see a boat go over the curvature, over the distance of 3 miles. Which doesn't make sense. The thing is, when you look out and you see a boat start to go over the horizon, if you suddenly get a pair of binoculars and look, it comes back again. And once it goes out of the sight of your binoculars, if you get a telescope, it comes back again. It doesn't go over any curve of the horizon. What we found, many people have done experiments with very high-powered zoom cameras, and they've watched a boat sail out to sea. And they've just kept trained on this boat. And what they see is, after a very long distance, you see an atmospheric effect where the bottom of the boat disappears and the top of the boat inverts, so you see a sort of mirror image. And that, with your eyesight, basically the bottom of the boat just melts into the horizon. One of the best examples of that is the Antwerp Notre Dame spire, which can be seen something like 240 kilometres away from the spire. So that should be over a mile below the horizon, and you can still see it. There's been a few famous examples just recently of a man who took a picture across the Great Lakes from Michigan and was able to see, I believe it's Chicago, which he shouldn't have been able to see. And the television station basically said it was a mirage.
This is from Joshua Nowicki, and what you're seeing here is a mirage. We typically would not be able to see this from the Lake Michigan shore. We talked about this last night. Conditions are right on the lake that we're actually seeing a mirage of the Chicago skyline.
But they always say it's a mirage, but for a mirage to happen, you have to have very specific atmospheric conditions. And there have been so many people who have seen exactly the same thing on different days, different seasons, always the same. It's not a mirage. It's simply that you're looking across a plane. You see in a kind of pyramid shape. Yeah, you have a horizon at your eye level, and everything above the horizon will go down into the horizon. Yeah, everything below the horizon will seem to go up. Just like if you're in a long hallway. You'll see that the walls will start to move in, and the roof and the floor will start to move into the centre. Yeah, so literally between you and the object you're looking at, there's all sorts of things sort of like waves going up and down. And while you can't see them, if they're beyond the limit of your sight, sometimes they can still obscure what you're looking at. But it's just because they're between you and it. And it's just the way, it's literally perspective. It's better if I could draw a diagram, but it's a very difficult subject to get your head around if you're not used to it. But it is perspective. One sort of other proof is there's a place in Bolivia called Salar de Uyuni, which is a salt flat. It's literally 100 miles wide one way and 80 miles across. And it's perfectly flat. And when it rains, literally you get an inch of water, and it looks like a perfect mirror. Now, how does that happen on a sphere? Yeah, it shows you that, you know, if you're one end of this salt flat, you can see perfectly clearly the other end 100 miles away. So it's just showing you that you know, the Earth is flat, and without the effect of the waves in the sea, you'll be able to see a whole lot further. If you were to go to NASA and download one of their photos of the Earth in the moon's sky and put it in Photoshop, okay, drop the saturation and the levels down, you'll see that the Earth has been pasted in, because you'll see a rectangular box around the Earth. It's all fraud, it's all fake. Pretty much everything NASA puts out is fraudulent. There are no images of Earth from space. The only one that NASA actually claims is a photograph was from 1972, and it's the famous picture. It's got Africa sort of near the top, and it's the same picture they've been using for the last 40 or 50 years in every textbook. Every other image is what they call a composite. It's Photoshop.
There was another layer to sort of simulate the atmosphere.
And then there's this little bright spot.
It's called the specular highlight. So it's the reflection of sunlight off of water.
Those are the pieces, but you can't just slap them all together.
It just didn't look realistic. It looks kind of flat, or the clouds are sort of too see-through. So I just hit Command Z a lot.
There's artistry to creating the world.
What I imagine it to be. Unfortunately, I'm not an astronaut. I've never been to space. But I've looked at these images over and over again, trying to sort of get the essence of it. It is photoshopped, but it's has to be. It is photoshopped, but it's has to be. It is photoshopped, but it's has to be. It is photoshopped, but it's has to be.
And many of us have been looking at these images of Earth, including the one they called the Big Blue Marble, which was released in 2002, I think. Again, when you zoom into it with Photoshop, you'll see where they've used the clone tool in Photoshop to take a picture of one of the clouds and stamp it in various places around the picture. They got lazy. In another image, they've even Photoshopped the word sex in the clouds, which is a subliminal tool they use to get people to sort of relate to something. They literally, you can look at this and you can find it on NASA's website. In a video I'm working on at the moment, I've got a video from what they call the Galileo space probe. As it left Earth, it took a series of shots of Earth, apparently. And you see that over the course of 25 hours, the clouds never move. Okay. Now, I happened to find some pictures of satellite pictures of Earth, and I noticed that in these separately taken satellite shots, the clouds were exactly the same as the ones in this Galileo shot. So it's a cloud map. It would be very simple indeed to just silence everybody, you know, put an end to this topic once and for all, turn the Hubble round and show us Earth in real time, zooming in onto a place so that we can see what's happening at that place, and we know that there is something up there looking down on us from space. But they will not do it. They can't do it. It doesn't exist. It literally doesn't exist. When you go onto the plane tracking software, you'll see hundreds and hundreds of flights over the northern hemisphere, and you can track those flights from beginning to end. When you look at any flight in the southern hemisphere, what you'll find is the flight takes off and disappears off the tracking usually about an hour after takeoff, and then later on will reappear an hour before landing. Now, there's no explanation for it. I mean, the point is that distances are very different, and distances and flight plans are very different on the flat Earth than they are on the ball. And when you look at flights in the southern hemisphere, they make some really crazy, sort of deviations. So, for instance, if we look on here, let's say a flight from Cape Town over here to Australia, say Sydney in Australia, they will take you to Dubai first, somewhere around here, yes. Just recently there was a case of a woman who was pregnant on a flight, and she was her waters broke on the flight. And I think it was from the Philippines to Los Angeles. Mm-hmm. And again, if you look on this map, you're from around here somewhere to here. Okay. Now they were flying across, and literally her waters broke, and they had to divert. They had to land. So instead of either going back to the Philippines or going on to Los Angeles, they landed in Alaska. Which again, if you look on the flat map, it's again a straight path. Santiago, Chile to Australia, mm-hmm. right, will usually stop in Los Angeles. Again, you can see on the flat map that it's again a straight path. It all seems to make sense, and if the only thing that would sort of confirm it or disprove it would be GPS. But hey ho, GPS doesn't work in the southern hemisphere. This is an issue because there have been a few people who said they've taken flights that have taken only 14 hours, and they're direct flights from Australia to South America. Now, somebody has actually redrawn the flat map to take into account these the distances, and apparently the distances work out. I haven't seen the map myself. But I should be looking further into it. But yes, up until these people came forward, and again, I haven't seen any real evidence that they have taken these flights. They told me they've taken these flights, but who knows? They can actually advertise a flight that's direct. They can price it out of the range of most people to take. And then if anybody does take it, they could cancel it. I don't think any flights actually fly directly over the North Pole at all. I think they skirt the North Pole, mm-hmm. but I don't think they fly directly over the actual pole. So mm-hmm. I don't know if it's to do with magnetics. The only thing I do know is that nothing flies over the South Pole, because again, on a flat map, the South Pole, the continent of Antarctica, is the ring around the Earth. So you can't fly over the ring and get anywhere. That's why we're not allowed to go there. I mean, think about it. It's the only treaty that's all these countries have signed and never broken and completely agreed on. It's the only one. And what treaty is there that everybody's agreed on? We're being kept away from it for a reason. They have some scientific bases there, and literally it's controlled by the military. If you try and go there by yourself, you will be sort of picked up and escorted back. There was a guy called Jarls Anderhoy who tried to take a mission to the Antarctica, and he was picked up and taken back by the military. It's a good reason, because they don't want you finding out what's beyond. Admiral Byrd he actually did four expeditions, and most of them were military expeditions with huge military groups. Thousands of people, planes, boats, the works. And yes, he confirmed in an interview that he discovered a continent as big as the continental United States out there, that was with warm water lakes and mountains and everything, that was completely uninhabited. And he described it as the other side of the South Pole to Middle America. So on the globe, that means it would be somewhere in the Indian Ocean. There's a huge continent that nobody knows about. So yeah, there's more going on than meets the eye. The other thing is, after Admiral Byrd came back after his last expedition, Antarctica was sealed off, and both America and the Russians started firing nuclear missiles straight up. Now, in America, that was called Project Operation Fishbowl, and it came under something called Project Dominic. Well, Fishbowl makes sense because it seems like Admiral Byrd found the edge of the dome, okay, while he was out there, and as soon as he left there, they started firing missiles straight up, I believe, to try and test how far that dome went. If you look at the footage of these explosions, what you'll see is an explosion. Well, when a bomb goes off in midair, it's a fireball. It expands in all directions and mostly up. Okay. Now, if you look at these explosions on Operation Fishbowl, they explode outwards in a ring, which means it's exploding against something because it can't rise with the heat. So it's exploding against something and exploding outwards. Okay, and the middle of the explosion, you'll see it glows, hot, and then it cools over time. So it looks to me like they were exploding against a dome. Now, I said it was Operation Fishbowl, obviously Fishbowl, but there's a chap called Rob Skiba who discovered that the Project Dominic, the word Dominic means of the Lord, Fishbowl of the Lord. So I believe they clearly know that we're in an enclosed system, and Admiral Byrd found the edge, and they've tested to see how far it goes up. They will also say that if a sniper is trying to hit something a great distance, a couple of miles away, they have to take into consideration the spinning of the Earth, because they say that as the bullet leaves the muzzle of the gun, it's now independent of the rotation of the Earth, so the Earth will spin away from where the bullet, and you have to take that into account. They say that about artillery shells as well, that it's not true. If that was true, a sniper would have to spend ages and ages calculating how to make that shot, and they don't. They literally take into consideration the wind and the elevation, and they don't take the Coriolis effect into consideration at all. Also, planes. If that works for bullets, if bullets, as soon as they leave the Earth, they're now independent of the spin, then why doesn't it work for planes? Yeah. There's a video on YouTube that actually tries to explain that the Coriolis effect works by using the example of a paper plane. You have to throw it. If you throw it north, the Earth will spin and the plane will land sort of east. But if you take the idea of a real plane, a plane would have to aim north to go east in that case. But that's not what happens. And if that was the case as well, planes would have to land on runways that are moving, and that would be impossible. But how is it that you can take a flight from London to New York and it would take exactly the same time as a flight from New York to London? Yeah, one's with the spin of the planet and the other one's against it. So it doesn't make sense. They'll say that the whole atmosphere is moving, with the planet, but that doesn't make sense either, because the atmosphere, say it's that thick, the top layer of the atmosphere will be moving slow, and as further you get in, will be moving faster. So how, if everything is moving like that, how do you get a light breeze that blows against the spin of the planet? How do you get a breeze that goes from north to south? It just doesn't make sense. And again, science will give you calculations and esoteric ideas, but you can go out and look for yourself, and you'll see what makes sense and what doesn't. The other thing is that we have senses to be able to sense acceleration. You get in a car and somebody puts their foot down, and you get thrown back and you see, you can feel the acceleration. Yeah, you can feel changes, very minute changes of acceleration. Yeah. So how is it that if you live if you live up here in Macedonia, yeah, which is spinning at maybe 700 miles an hour, yeah, because the speed it's spinning is slower than this speed. So if you took a flight down to Africa, yeah, on the equator, why don't you feel the change in acceleration? Yeah, so why don't you feel the change in acceleration? You know, you have these senses that will register the slightest change. Yeah, but you get off the plane there and you don't feel dizzy, you know, because now you're moving a lot faster. So no, it doesn't make sense. Well, you know, you saw from his balloon when he stepped out on the platform, you know, the curvature of the Earth. Yeah, it looked very obvious. Oh, everybody pointed it and said, "Oh, look, there's a curvature." But when you actually looked at the ground, when you looked at the Earth, well, it was New Mexico. That's where he jumped. The whole Earth that you saw there was New Mexico. So if that was a curvature, the Earth must be very, very small indeed, and New Mexico must take up a huge part of it. Yeah, it was a fisheye lens to curve that, to make that curve. And when he jumped, it took, I think it took him like 2 hours to get to that height. Yeah, he went straight up. In that 2 hours, the Earth should have rotated away quite a distance. But I think he only landed something like 70 kilometres away from where he sort of went up in the first place. And that can be, you know, attributed to the wind. You know, so no, I mean there's no proof whatsoever. There is so much to this. As I said, if you start looking and asking questions about the very basic things, you'll find that the answers you were given as a child just do not make sense. So the idea there is that it must be a globe because you know, the sun. If the sun's here, then it's got to be dark on the other side. Well, the thing about the sun is that we're told it's 93 million miles away. It's not. It's actually something around 3,000 miles away, and about 34 miles across. That might sound really crazy, but if you look at look out on a day that's got broken cloud, you'll see that the sun rays will come out at an angle. Most people have seen this. The rays come down in at angles. If the sun was 93 million miles away, then all the light will be coming parallel. So if you imagine, there's no way to show 93 million miles, but something way, way over there, all the light that reaches this globe will be parallel. There's no way that light can come that far and spread out like that. Now, if you follow those light rays, you'll see exactly where the sun is. And as I said, it works out to be about 3,100 miles. Now, if that's the case, and the sun is circling over this flat plane, yeah, its light range is limited. So it's illuminating the part of the Earth it's like over at the moment. So say over Europe, it might, or over South America there, it's over there. Well, Australia's going to be in the dark because the sun isn't going to throw enough light to illuminate Australia. Yeah. Now, most people say, well, I see the sun rise and set. How can that be if it's just going round in a circle? Well, that's perspective again. If you actually see video of the sun coming up and going down, many times you'll see that the sun starts off as it's coming up very, very tiny, and it gets bigger as it gets closer to midday and then gets smaller again. It's literally that effect of perspective, you know, with something's above you, like the ceiling in a hallway, yeah, as it goes further away, it will seem to sink down towards the horizon until it disappears beyond the limit of your sight. And that's all you're seeing. You're seeing literally the sun circling overhead, but seeming to set. There was a team in California that launched a rocket 75 miles up. And you can find this video on YouTube. It's difficult to watch because the cameras, there were 7 cameras on this rocket, and it was spinning as it went up, so it's very, let's say, difficult to watch. But this chap, Refi, studied this video meticulously, looking for some kind of mistake or some kind of evidence, and he realised that he could see the moon. So he went online to a website called timeanddate.com, where it will show you graphically where the moon and sun is at any time on any day. And he did a bit of detective work to find out exactly when the rocket was fired, and found that the moon should have been on the other side of the planet, over Australia. Now, the rocket was 75 miles up and it could see the moon, but anybody down on the ground wouldn't be able to see it. But the point is that if the moon was over Australia, on the other side of it would be on the other side of the planet, which is, okay, there. So down there on the other side of the planet, and the rocket went up here. So there's no way that rocket should have been able to see the moon on the other side of the planet. If you watch the trajectory of the space shuttle, it doesn't go straight up. It always goes in a curve and out to sea. The point is that they actually go horizontal. The space shuttle goes horizontal. It never goes any further up. It goes horizontal, very, very low down in the atmosphere, because it drops its external tank while it's still in the atmosphere. So you know, it's still in the atmosphere while it's horizontal, so it never gets any higher, and it goes out of sight, not because it goes too high, because it goes too far downrange. And it seems that nobody's ever on the space shuttle, and the proof of that is the Challenger disaster. In, I believe it's 1986, the Challenger exploded just after takeoff and killed 7 astronauts. But it turns out that 6 of the astronauts are still alive, and most of them are using their original names. And you can find pictures of them. They're using the same names, and they're doing ordinary jobs now. Teachers, lecturers, lawyers, whatever. But they're still alive. I think it's a mock-up. I think it's an empty shell, and literally just dishes in the sea, out of sight. And they have a plane that's mocked up to look like a space shuttle. And you can see whenever the space shuttle lands, you can hear it. It's a loud jet engine. You watch any video of the space shuttle landing, you can tell it's a jet engine. It's a jet-powered aircraft. That's it. It's not a glider. In my video, I show you a glider, how that seems, and then I show you the space shuttle. And yeah, it's not a glider. It's an aircraft. And that's what they're fooling us, taking billions of dollars in and giving us images and fake planes for that 10 billion, you know, however many billions of dollars it is. But you've got the external tank and the space shuttle. Yeah, it's like horizontal at this point, and then they drop the tank. Okay. Now the space shuttle isn't powered at this point because the tank has all the fuel.
Yes.
Okay. So when the engine stops, the tank is dropped. Basically, the space shuttle and tank should follow the same path because neither of them are powered. They should both fall in the same way. Now, because the tank has all the fuel, those pods on the back of the space shuttle aren't fuel tanks. They have a very, very small amount of fuel in there for orbital manoeuvring. But from this point, which again is still in the Earth's atmosphere, because the tank, is falling there, it now has to go from there into orbit. They haven't got the fuel there to insert it into orbit. Disney and NASA have worked very closely together. Disney worked with NASA on the moon project. Yeah, they made it. They filmed it so that it would be entertaining for the masses. Yeah, and they're still working with NASA. I absolutely believe that Stanley Kubrick, filmed the moon landing. He left a few clues just to say, so that
like Michelangelo.
Yeah, so that we eventually would know that this was his work. Yeah, I did this. It's a joke. It was meant to fool people in 1960s. So you got like clear footprints, but yet you don't have an impression where the pads of the lunar lander were, or a blast crater where the engines were blasting downwards. And also, the camera followed the capsule straight up, right? And it followed it very precisely. right? And it stopped when it started to pitch over, right? Now, NASA says, oh, we did it remotely. Well, there was a 2 or 3 second delay between sending signals and the camera starting to respond, and then another couple of seconds for them to see what's happened. So that it's next to impossible to get that sort of accuracy with that kind of, and it's only done once. I mean, they can't sort of keep doing it over and get it right. They do it once and they got it right the first time. So no, it's either they left an astronaut on the moon to film them, or it was fake. It was fake. It was absolutely fake. There's not too many people involved in this. I mean, NASA controls space as such. The other agencies have popped up, but literally it's a money-making scheme. NASA makes hundreds of billions of dollars a year.
Dobra, a Rusy...
Okay. The Russians, okay, they're getting in on the act as well. They make money from this. And have you seen the imagery that they put out? The Chinese have put out, or I think it was the Japanese that put out images of Earth from the moon, and it looks even more fake than NASA's ones. It's a money-making scheme, and they're all joining the bandwagon. But that isn't the first thing that's been hidden over the years. I mean, we're all driving petrol cars because 100 years ago, the Rockefeller family basically cornered the market on oil, and the car industry was going electric. So all cars would have been electric from the get-go, but they basically forced everybody to use petrol cars, and have hidden this secret. And literally, we could be running around in electric cars that have unlimited mileage by now, but we're still using these 100-year-old machines, dirty machines, because of a secret that's been kept. It's easy. If everybody's been trained into believing that this is real, right? And there's space, and it's within our interest to explore space and go to the moon, go to Mars. Yeah, people will pay for it, and they're making billions. Mm-hmm. And yeah, there's more to it, because I believe there's a big deception coming, and it's to do with aliens, because now since Roswell, 1947, that was the first time anybody had ever understood the idea of aliens. But since then, we've been bombarded with science fiction and the idea of aliens, and most people believe there are aliens out there. So they've prepared us for an alien invasion or an alien saviour. And I think the flat Earth came along at the right moment to educate people, to make people believe or understand that we've been lied to. And if you know, as I know in my heart now, that is real and this isn't, I will not be fooled by aliens coming, because there are no aliens. There's no space. Yeah, it's all fantasy by Disney and NASA. Well, the Bible has a very, very clear view of what this place is, and it matches that place more than it matches this. Okay, and what it says is the great deep is under it, just water. It's just deep water, and above the firmament is water. And it says in Genesis that he separated the water below from the water above, and made a space, and then made dry land appear out of the water. So what's under the flat Earth? Well, it's water, and it just goes on. Again, I don't know for sure, because I've not been under there. I don't know what's past the outside of, or the first few hundred miles of Antarctica. But everything I've seen over the last year and a half tells me that is true and this isn't. And I'm starting to believe and trust my intuition about this. Nobody has actually really gone all the way across Antarctica. Yeah. Now there are millionaires out there who could assemble the resources to make an expedition and completely go across and chart Antarctica and make a name for themselves, being the first person to do that. Yeah. But nobody ever does. One thing I was going to say, which is slightly totally off topic, but the topic I really want to go to is that people, ordinary people, have become scientists through this. Okay, you know, the science community is ignoring a lot of the things that we're looking at, and so normal people are going out and doing experiments. And one of the experiments has turned up an amazing fact that we've not been told, and it destroys the whole idea of this heliocentric system, and that is the moon. If you get a piece of card, put it on the floor, and sort of you put another piece of card to act as a barrier for the moonlight. So you have the moon above, card on the floor, and a piece of card in front to shield half of the card. Yeah. Now a lot of people have these laser thermometers. Now you can actually measure the temperature of the moonlight next to the temperature of the shade of the moonlight, and you'll find the moonlight is colder than the shade, the opposite from the sun. So the moon is throwing out its own light, and that light is the opposite from the sun. Now, that tells you that it's not reflecting the sun's light. It's producing its own, and its light is different from the sun's. So, you know, the scientific community have not told us this, yeah, because they won't tell us this because it destroys this idea that the sun is, you know, is lighting up the moon. This world is very different from what most people think it is. There are very powerful people who essentially rule this world right now. And the ordinary person is a slave in this world. And slaves aren't educated. You know, they're taught what they need to, or, you know, they need to know. That's it. They're not taught truth. They're taught what they need to know. And so you're taught enough so that you can, you know, do the paperwork and operate the machinery, but you're not meant to know what's really going on, because that's the power they have over us. They know what's going on, you know, how this world works. We don't, so they can control us. One of the things about slavery is the slaves weren't freed. They were never freed. When the 14th Amendment or 13th Amendment, I can't remember which one, actually made everybody a slave. If you're a citizen of a country, you're a slave. That's what a citizen is. So they literally extended the slavery to everybody and made it an open prison, and that's where everybody in the world lives now. We're slaves to very powerful masters. We don't see bars. No. Yeah? The bars are the borders of the country. Right? You have to use a pass to get out, and they'll let you out if you show them your pass. Yeah, and sometimes they won't let you out. You know, as I was coming here, I was lining up to go on the plane, and somebody in front of me was told, "No, you can't fly. They found something in your bag, so you can't fly today." So, you know, we have, as I said, we have natural rights to travel anywhere on this earth. We were born on this earth. We have the right to travel anywhere. But our masters have kept us in small, open prisons that you need to get permission to move around. This idea that, billions of years ago, nothing exploded and then everything came out of that nothingness. Ridiculous. But they try to make you believe that the idea that a supreme being, a creator, created this is ridiculous compared to that idea. I mean, if you look at it objectively, I would lean towards a creator because, there's so much that points to, the fingerprint of a creator. But it's no less ridiculous than nothing exploding and becoming something. In my opinion, the Big Bang theory and the theory of evolution and the ball Earth theory are all interlinked, and they're all there to make us feel as though we're insignificant. We're small, tiny,
miniature,
unimportant pieces of slime crawling around on a speck of dust in an infinite universe. If that's true, and there's no purpose, there's no meaning to anything, then our owners can do whatever they want with us, then, this is all accidental. So food can be genetically modified because it's imperfect. We can be modified because we're imperfect. If we realize that this is the universe, and
Complete universe.
yes, this system is the
Is
complete
everything.
Is everything. Everything that NASA has put out is CGI, is fake. Okay, people say, I think you mentioned it. If you look out into the universe, you see that the moon is round, spherical, and the planets are spherical, and so why are we flat? Well, how do you know that the planets and the stars are spherical? All you get is, if you look for a telescope, you see a flat disk. If you think you see a spherical shape there, well, it needs two eyes to resolve 3D. If you're looking for a telescope, you can't see anything in 3D. It's going to be flat anyway. So all you see is a flat blob of light. It's only NASA that's given you these beautiful pictures of so-called planets and stars. Yeah. So it's a fallacy to say, well, everything else out there is spherical, so we must be. How this is special. So why? It's like saying a basketball is round, so why isn't the court round? It's a fallacy. So this idea of a ball Earth, theory of evolution, the Big Bang, is all about making us feel nothing, so that we can be used. If everybody realized how special we all are, how unique every single life is, then this whole world would change overnight. We wouldn't allow ourselves to be used by this cabal. We wouldn't allow this planet to be destroyed, because they're destroying it because, it's just an accidental planet, one of millions. We've found other Earths. Eventually, if this one gets too messed up, we'll go to another one. No, this is it. So if we all realise that, then we wouldn't allow all these things that are going on. It's all about control. There are a small group of people who want to control the world, and because there's so many of us out there, they can't control us directly. They can't, this small group of people can't, come round to all of us and control us directly. So they must use our own minds, our own hearts and minds against ourselves. And this is what they've done. They've educated us into this world, into this globe spinning, heliocentric Big Bang evolution world, which makes us nothing. This is amazing because when I first started looking, it was about a year and a half ago, I looked on YouTube and there were maybe about 100 videos, not even that probably, and nobody was talking about it, right? And then over 2015, it exploded. There are thousands and thousands and thousands of people looking at Flat Earth now. And what happens is that you'll watch something or read something, and something will strike a chord in your mind, and you'll think, yeah, I've always wondered that. And what will happen is you will start feverishly researching. I mean, what happened to me was, as soon as I got that, I spent every waking hour looking for things and testing things, and this seems to be replicated with thousands of people around the world who suddenly come into this. They start, researching and getting a passion for this, because this is what I think, it's the truth, and we recognise the truth when we hear it, and we feel it, and this I believe has come at the exact right time, so that we awaken to what's going on in the world. Nothing else, 9/11 even hasn't awoken people, right, to this extent. For me, I've been an atheist for 40 years. From the age of 13, I didn't want anything to do with God and Bibles and whatever and religions. And now I know for a fact there is a creator. I've seen his fingerprint, not just with the flat earth. Everything I've done in the last 5 or 10 years has led me to see that there is a creator now. and there's a great many people out there who have had exactly the same revelation as I have. And it is. I'm now following the commandments and trying to be the best human being that I can be, because I think it was a guy called Kent Hovind who said there are only two possibilities. Either there is a God or there isn't. And both of them are terrifying.
Yeah.
If there isn't a God, then nobody's in control. We're hurtling through space and there's no plan and there's no nothing, and that's terrifying. If there is a God, then we'd better find out who he is and what he wants and do exactly what he says. And it turns out that he gave us very specific instructions on how to live. And they're not rules as in laws that you must follow because or put you in prison if you don't. No, these are rules to live by, to make a harmonious world. Don't harm anyone, don't kill anybody, don't steal from people. Don't covet people's items.
Don't lie.
Don't lie. I mean, these things are written in our hearts anyway. Yeah, but we're in a society that that legalizes all of the 10 Commandments. Policemen and soldiers can kill. They're allowed to kill.
Politicians can lie.
They can lie.
They're lying all the time.
They're lying all the time. Police have been told that they are allowed to lie to try and get to catch somebody. Yeah, they're allowed to lie. Everything in the 10 Commandments is legalized in this society. That tells you who runs this society. Yeah. So yeah, this is a profound movement. I don't like using the word movement, but it's a profound shift in consciousness for people, because unlike any other topic that's